The spaceport on Garner 4 buzzed with activity as Captain Kiera Wu stepped off the diplomatic shuttle, her boots clicking against the crystalline floor. The planet's 3 azure moons hung low in the lavender sky, bathing the sprawling complex in an otherworldly glow. As the newly appointed logistics officer for the Human Alliance's trading center on this neutral world, Kiera felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. Captain Wu, welcome to Garner 4. A tall figure with blue-tinted skin approached, extending a 6-fingered hand. I am General Keshar of the Alson Defense Force. I trust your journey was comfortable. Kiera clasped the general's hand, noting the firm grip. As comfortable as one can expect through 3 jump points, General. The Gamma route isn't exactly known for its smooth passages. General Keshar nodded, his vertical pupils dilating slightly, a sign of interest among the Alson. Indeed, but efficiency matters more than comfort in these troubling times. Come, Governor Avik Rin awaits us in the Central Command Center. As they walked through the gleaming corridors of the spaceport, Kiera observed the diverse array of beings moving about their business. Ventari merchants with their feathered crests haggled with hulking Graxian traders, while delicate Elysian diplomats glided past on anti-gravity platforms. The galactic community was a tapestry of life forms, each bringing their unique contributions to the cosmic dance of civilization. The humans have quite a reputation for their, shall we say, abundance of resources, Keshar commented, glancing at Kiera with what might have been curiosity. Your supply ships are already 3 times the size of any other species' vessels. Kiera smiled. We believe in being prepared for any eventuality, General. The universe can be unpredictable. They entered the command center where Governor Avik Rin, a Ventari with iridescent plumage, stood before a holographic display. His feathers rustled as he turned to greet them. Captain Wu, your timing is impeccable. Rin's translator rendered his chirping voice in a standard galactic. We've just received disturbing news from the frontier. The holographic display shifted, revealing a star map with several systems highlighted in ominous red. Kiera studied the strategic positions, her military training immediately recognizing the pattern of movement. The Sorhyun, Keshar growled, a low rumble emanating from his chest. They've begun mobilizing their fleet along the border zones. 5 systems in 3 weeks. What's their stated purpose? Kiera asked, her mind already racing through logistics calculations. They claim it's routine exercises, Rin's feathers flattened, a sign of agitation among his species. But their patterns suggest otherwise. They're testing our response times, probing for weaknesses. And they're particularly interested in our supply lines, Keshar added. Admiral Rulvar, their fleet commander, has made several public statements questioning the community's ability to maintain sustained operations in contested space. Specifically, Rin pulled up a recorded message. He has called human logistics capability nothing but propaganda and empty promises. The holographic display shimmered, and a Sorhian officer appeared, reptilian features twisted in what might have been a sneer. The humans talk of endless supply, of supporting entire campaigns across the stars. Let them prove it. Their words mean nothing when the void swallows their precious cargo ships. Kiera felt her jaw clench. The Sorhian commander's dismissive tone struck at the core of her professional pride. Captain Wu, Keshar turned to her. The Council needs a demonstration. We cannot allow the Sorhian to believe we lack the capability to respond to aggression. What exactly are you asking for, General? Merrick's 5. It's a frontier world, mostly Alson colonists with Ventari trade posts. If the Sorhian decide to escalate, it will be their first target. We need to show them what we can do. Kiera nodded slowly, her mind already formulating plans. With your permission, Governor, I'll begin preparations immediately. We'll show them exactly what human logistics can accomplish. As she left the command center, Diplomat Hark Kuro, a fellow human, caught her arm. A word of caution, Captain. Remember that overwhelming force can sometimes invite the very conflict we're trying to prevent. Sometimes the only way to prevent a war is to show your potential enemy that victory is impossible, Kiera replied. Just don't start one in the process. Over the next 72 hours, Kiera transformed Garner 4's logistics hub into a beehive of activity. Human cargo vessels began arriving in increasing numbers, their holds packed with everything from medical supplies to defensive emplacements. The other species watched with growing amazement and some concern as humanity's true logistical capabilities became apparent. Captain, her chief of staff, Lieutenant Bella Ramirez, reported on the third day, "We've got the equivalent of 5 years' worth of supplies staged and ready." The Olsen are impressed, but the Draconian ambassador is muttering about destabilization. "Let them mutter," Kiera said, reviewing the manifests. "Our allies on Merix, 5 know we have their backs, and our potential enemies need to understand what they're facing." The tension ratcheted up a notch when a Galactic Council meeting was convened. Representatives from 24 species gathered in the Grand Amphitheater, their diverse forms filling tiered seating designed to accommodate everything from gas-dwelling cloud weavers to burrowing terrakers. Kiera stood at the central podium, a holographic display materializing behind her. "Esteemed delegates, I present humanity's response to the Sorhun threat. Codename, Operation Endless Supply." The display showed a complex network of supply routes, staging areas, and defensive positions. "We will establish a logistics corridor capable of sustaining military operations on Merix 5 and the surrounding systems for an indefinite period. This includes mobile repair facilities, medical stations, ammunition depots, and even hydroponic farms for fresh provisions." Gasps echoed through the chamber. The Krivali ambassador's crystalline body resonated with disbelief. Such an undertaking, the resource expenditure alone would bankrupt most civilizations. "Well, not most civilizations," Kiera stated simply. General Keshar stood from the Olsen section. "I have witnessed the preparations firsthand. The humans are bringing resources that exceed theoretical maximums by factors I hesitate to state aloud." "This is madness," the Sorhun representative, Ambassador T-Chyeske, hissed through his translator. "You risk destabilizing the entire sector with this show of excess." "We risk ensuring peace," Kiera countered. "When your fleet commander understands that any aggressive action will be met with unlimited support for the defenders, perhaps diplomacy will seem more attractive." After the meeting, Harkuro found Kiera in her office. "That was quite a performance, Captain." "It wasn't a performance," she replied, fatigue evident in her voice. "It was a statement of fact. You know they'll see it as a challenge. Better they see it now than test our resolve later." "And if they call our bluff?" Kiera looked up, her eyes steel. "It's not a bluff." 3 days later, an explosion rocked the Garner 4 spaceport. The blast originated from a secondary ammunition storage facility, killing 4 Olsen technicians and injuring a dozen others. As emergency responders rushed to the scene, evidence pointed to sabotage, sophisticated enough to suggest state-level expertise. Sorhun operatives, Keshar concluded after reviewing the preliminary investigation. "They've infiltrated our operations." The attack only strengthened Kiera's resolve. Human supply ships continued to arrive, their holds disgorging mountains of material. Modular habitats, advanced medical equipment, defensive weapons systems, all organized with a precision that left other species in awe. "I've never seen such organization," Governor Wren admitted, watching as automated systems sorted and cataloged incoming supplies. "Your logistics AI is incredibly sophisticated." "We prefer redundancy over automation," Kiera corrected. "Every system has human oversight, every shipment triple-checked. We learned the hard way that machines can fail at the worst possible moments." "But the scale." Wren's feathers trembled. "You're moving enough supplies to support a population 10 times that of Merix 5. Better to have and not need than to need and not have." As preparations entered their final phase, Kiera found herself in an unexpected confrontation. Aryu himself arrived on Garner 4 for what was officially described as a courtesy call. The Saurian admiral was impressive even by his species standards. Nearly 3 meters tall, scales the color of burnished copper, with narrow eyes that missed nothing. Their meeting took place in the station's observation lounge. Walls of transparent aluminum offering a panoramic view of the supply operations below. Dozens of ships were visible, loading and unloading in a carefully choreographed dance. Impressive display, Captain Wu, Arulvar said, his translator giving his words a slightly mechanical edge. Though I wonder if quantity can compensate for strategic flexibility. Flexibility is easier when you're not worried about running out of ammunition, Kiera replied. Your people have a saying, I believe, something about a paper tiger. We also have one about actions speaking louder than words. Arulvar's tail, thick and muscular, twitched slightly, a sign of agitation. You create a powder keg, Captain. All this firepower, all these resources concentrated in one sector. If something were to ignite it, if someone were to ignite it, she corrected. Their eyes met, predator to predator. Neither blinked for several heartbeats. The Saurian Empire has existed for millennia, he finally said. We understand the ebb and flow of power better than most. This display of yours, it's unprecedented. The universe changes. Those who don't adapt get left behind, or provoke unnecessary conflict. That's what you call seizing 5-star systems? Necessary conflict. Arulvar's pupils contracted to slits. Those systems welcomed our presence. Unlike this, occupation force you're building. Support force, Kiera corrected. For allies who requested our assistance. Allies who might reconsider the wisdom of such powerful friends. Before Kiera could respond, her communicator chimed with an emergency code. She answered immediately, her face paling as the report came through. Admiral, she said to Arulvar, though her eyes had gone cold. I believe our conversation is concluded. Unless you'd like to explain why your fleet just entered the Merrick system. The Saurian commander's surprise seemed genuine. I've given no such order. Then perhaps you should contact your subordinates. They appear to have different ideas about necessary conflicts. Within hours, confirmation arrived. A Saurian battle group had crossed into Merrick's 5's orbital space, matching velocity with several commercial stations. No shots had been fired, but the message was clear. This was a test of the galactic community's resolve. They're taking hostages, General Keshar reported, his usually calm demeanor showing cracks. My people on those stations, they're essentially trapped. Kiera stood before the massive strategic display in the command center, watching status updates flow in. How many souls? Combined? Over 3,000. Mostly civilians, traders, technicians, families. The pressure in the room seemed to increase as every eye turned to the human captain. The Saurian gambit was elegant in its simplicity. Test whether the alliance would risk escalation to save lives. Captain Wu, Governor Rin spoke softly, his feathers drooping. Whatever decision you make, it should be unanimous. We cannot have division at this critical moment. Kiera studied the display for several long minutes. Then she turned to her staff. Lieutenant Ramirez, initiate logistics overload protocol. Ramirez blanched. Ma'am, that's everything. Are you sure? Launch everything. Every ship, every supply cache, every resource we've stockpiled. I want Merrick's 5 to look like salvation itself has arrived. What happened next would be recorded in military academies for generations. Every human cargo vessel in the Garner. For system launched simultaneously, creating a traffic pattern so dense that navigation computers initially refused to plot courses. Ships that were deemed overdue for maintenance were pressed into service. Even partially loaded vessels departed immediately, their remaining space filled with whatever supplies were available. The sheer scale of the operation overwhelmed tracking systems. Hundreds of ships, from massive bulk carriers to nimble supply runners, accelerated toward Merrick's, 5 in waves. They carried enough supplies to outfit a dozen fleets, enough weapons to arm a planet, enough medical supplies to treat millions. They'll never reach us, Arulvar had said hours earlier, before his own departure. The void will swallow them before they can change anything. But the void had never faced humanity's stubborn refusal to accept limitation. The first wave arrived 36 hours later, human ships dropping out of warp space in perfect formation. The Sorhean blockade, anticipating a handful of vessels, found themselves faced with an armada of supply ships, each one broadcasting civilian codes, but carrying defensive weaponry within their legal rights. This is insane. The Sorhean fleet commander's transmission crackled with disbelief. There must be 200 of them. 347, Kiera corrected via secure channel. And that's just the first wave. The strategic situation changed instantly. The Sorhean fleet, built for rapid strikes and territorial intimidation, had never been designed to blockade against such overwhelming numbers. Their ships were powerful but limited in duration. They lacked the logistics tail to maintain position indefinitely. Captain Wu, RULVAR's voice came through direct communication. This is unprecedented. Are you trying to start a war? No, I'll admit it. I'm trying to end a hostage situation. You move. For 3 tense days, the standoff continued. More human ships arrived in waves, creating a virtual city in space around Merrick's 5. They didn't attack, they simply existed, overwhelming the Sorhean's capacity to monitor them all. The sight of cargo vessels unloading supplies directly to the besieged stations, protected by sheer numbers rather than weapons, changed the entire dynamic. You're paralyzing our decision-making, RULVAR admitted during one of many tense negotiations. We cannot track all your movements, cannot predict your actions. This is standard logistics, Kiera finished. We simply brought enough resources that losing half our vessels wouldn't even slow us down. This explains why you humans are so persistent, another Sorhean officer muttered. You have too much of everything. Finally, faced with an operation they couldn't sustain and couldn't counter, the Sorhean fleet withdrew. The hostages were released, the stations liberated. But the victory had an edge of hollowness to it. You've proven your point, General Keshar said in the aftermath, standing beside Kiera as they watched supply ships redistribute their cargo. The Sorhean won't underestimate human logistics again. I'm not sure it was the point I wanted to prove, Kiera admitted. We showed our strength, but also revealed how willing we are to commit everything to a single operation. Perhaps that's the deterrent you needed. Perhaps. Or perhaps we just raised the stakes for every future conflict. In the following weeks, tensions eased but didn't dissipate entirely. The Galactic Council convened a peace conference on Garner 4, seeking to establish new protocols for resource deployment in disputed sectors. The humans found themselves in the unusual position of being simultaneously admired and feared. You must understand, Ambassador HFY addressed the assembly, that such massive logistics operations destabilize careful balances of power. What happens when your overwhelming support chooses one side over another in internal conflicts? Kiera stood to respond. That's precisely why we're here, to establish protocols that prevent such scenarios. We've demonstrated our capability. Now let's codify when and how it should be used. The negotiations stretched on, but a framework began to emerge. The Sorhean agreed to end their aggressive expansions in exchange for guaranteed access to human logistics networks for humanitarian purposes. It was a compromise that neither side fully embraced, but both could accept. During a quiet moment, RULVAR approached Kiera in the station's biodome, a space where various species could enjoy atmospheric comfort on neutral ground. I've spent my career studying military logistics, he said without preamble. What you did, it was like watching someone rewrite the laws of physics. We've always calculated margins, planned for limitations, accepted constraints. And you've conquered dozens of systems with that philosophy, against opponents who think the same way. But you, he shook his head, scales catching the artificial sunlight. You humans don't understand the concept of restraint in logistics. Every other civilization asks, how much do we need? You ask, how much can we carry? Is that such a bad approach? It's terrifying, ineffective, and perhaps necessary in a universe that often defies prediction. As the conference wound down, Governor Rin held a private ceremony honoring the Human Logistics Corps. You've changed something fundamental in how the galactic community approaches conflict resolution, he said. By being prepared for everything, you've made certain conflicts obsolete. But Kiera felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. What if next time, someone figures out a counter to our approach? What if they escalate beyond logistics, forcing us to choose between backing down or actual warfare? Then we'll face that challenge when it comes, General Keshar replied. For now, your people have bought us something precious. Time to build understanding instead of weapons. In the months that followed, the incident became a case study in military academies across the galaxy. The logistics overflow event demonstrated that overwhelming support could be as effective as overwhelming firepower, sometimes more so. The Sorhyun, rather than harboring simple resentment, began their own logistics reforms. RULVAR instituted crash programs to expand his fleet's supply capacity, acknowledging that future conflicts would be won by those who could sustain operations rather than just initiate them. Human logistics capabilities became something of a diplomatic tool. When a plague threatened the Elysian homeworld, human supply ships arrived with medical equipment and personnel before anyone requested assistance. When a solar flare disabled the Draconi colony's power grid, human logistics managers helped coordinate the relief effort, sharing their organizational expertise. But unease lingered. Some in the Galactic Council began whispering about the human advantage, the seemingly infinite capacity for resource mobilization that others couldn't match. In quiet chambers, debates raged about whether limits should be placed on logistics operations, whether there should be ceilings on how much support any single species could provide. 6 months after the Merrick's 5 incident, Kiera faced her greatest challenge yet. Intelligence reports suggested coordinated action by 3 different species, not the Sorhyun, but opportunists who had studied the overflow event and believed they'd found vulnerabilities. They planned to strike simultaneously at multiple locations, General Keshar explained in an emergency briefing. They calculate that even your logistics network can't support 3 crisis zones at once. Kiera smiled grimly. Then they haven't been paying attention to our shipbuilding statistics. We've doubled our cargo capacity since Merrick's 5. You anticipated this? We anticipated that someone would eventually test our limits. It's what we would do. Once again, the universe witnessed the spectacle of human logistics in full deployment. This time, however, something new emerged, a coordinated effort among multiple species. The Alcyn, Ventari, and even some Sorhyun vessels joined the human supply train, creating a polyglot fleet that combined the strengths of multiple civilizations. You've inspired emulation, RULVAR observed, commanding a squadron of converted Sorhyun cargo ships. We still can't match your volume, but we've learned the importance of depth and planning. Best form of flattery. Best form of survival. If the galaxy is entering an age where logistics determines strategic outcomes, we all must adapt. The combined operation was even more successful than the original overflow event. 3 crises were defused without a single shot fired in anger, purely through the demonstration of collective logistical power. The attempted aggressors withdrew, realizing they faced not just human capability, but galactic solidarity. As peace negotiations progressed, certain truths became apparent. Humanity's approach to logistics, the refusal to accept limitation, the commitment to overwhelming adequacy, had fundamentally altered strategic thinking throughout the galaxy. But it had also created new forms of cooperation as other species recognized that in an age of potential abundance, old zero-sum thinking was obsolete. The Galactic Council eventually ratified the Logistics Limitation Treaty, which didn't actually limit logistics capabilities but established frameworks for their defensive use. The human model became the standard. Maintain massive surge capacity for crisis response, but do so transparently and with community oversight. Years later, when Admiral Kiera Wu, promoted for her role in reshaping strategic thought, gave lectures at the Galactic Strategic Institute, she always emphasized the same point. Our greatest strength wasn't the supplies themselves, but our willingness to commit them fully in support of peace. The universe had never seen that kind of dedication to logistical readiness because no one had faced the unique pressures of human development on Earth. Students from dozens of species would nod in understanding. Some had lived through the transition from an era where wars were lost for want of supplies to one where wars became unnecessary because supplies were guaranteed. The lesson endured. When survival depends on community, unlimited support for that community becomes the most powerful weapon of all. In quiet moments, usually while reviewing supply manifests that would have seemed impossible in earlier times, Kiera sometimes wondered if humanity had truly introduced something new to the galaxy, or if they'd simply remembered a truth that had been forgotten amidst the cold calculations of interstellar politics. That the greatest strength comes not from the willingness to fight, but from the capacity to support whatever fight necessity demands. The universe, in its vast and varied wisdom, seemed to respond well to this philosophy. And somewhere among the stars, new species emerging into galactic society found not just advanced civilizations, but an infrastructure of support that promised them a fighting chance against whatever challenges the cosmos might present. The humans, those beings who had never understood logistical restraint, had built something unprecedented, a galaxy where such restraint was no longer necessary, because abundance had replaced scarcity as the default condition of civilization. And though new threats would always emerge, the foundation they'd laid, a commitment to supporting allies without hesitation, remained unshakable. In the grand tapestry of galactic history, humanity's greatest contribution wasn't any single technological achievement or military victory. It was the simple, revolutionary idea that when friends face danger, the correct response isn't to calculate the minimum needed for survival, but to send everything, because in the end, the only restraint worth observing is the restraint that comes from having already given all you can give. The stars, ancient and patient, bore witness to this transformation. And as new generations of humans and aliens alike grew up in a universe where help was always coming, where cargo ships on the horizon meant salvation rather than surrender, they carried forward a legacy of generosity that had redefined what it meant to be powerful in the community of sentient beings. In the cosmic dance of civilizations, humanity had learned one of the universe's most fundamental truths, that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to cast restraint aside and commit fully to the support of those who need it. The stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter wherever human supply ships went, as if even the cosmos appreciated beings who understood that in the grand equation of survival, there's no such thing as too much help for those who need it most. And so, across the galaxy, whenever the phrase "humans don't understand logistical restraint" was spoken, it was no longer said with mockery or disbelief, but with respect, gratitude, and perhaps a touch of wonder at what dedicated logistics could achieve when bound not by fear, but by an unwavering commitment to the principle that when it comes to supporting life and preserving peace, there can never be too much preparation, too many supplies, or too much care for one's allies among the stars.